Food isn't what it used to be when both my grandfathers were growing food. It's all farmed commercially, and the soils have been depleted. So the first reason to take supplements is to substitute for what's missing in food.
The vast majority of patients dealing with a diagnosis of cancer are missing some fundamental nutrients.
CoQ10 being so important for your heart, but it turns out that along that pathway, there's something called geranol, and we never knew you could get it as a supplement.
Vitamin K2 prevents calcium from getting lodged in your soft tissues.
And so we've gotten so afraid of being hungry, and we use food as such a self-soothing mechanism that it is terrifying for people to imagine going 4 hours without a snack or skipping a meal.
There's only one proven methodology to slow aging and radically extend human lifespan. Just one.
One of the big things with aging, I always say, you want to age quickly, keep your insulin up.
I've promised you that this episode will be full of practical advice and personal recommendations from our guests, so now it's time to deliver. My name is Stefan, and as always, I'll be accompanying you as you gain life-changing knowledge and wisdom. We've done our best to cover as much as possible in the Ageless docuseries, but there is so much more information we couldn't fit in the episodes. Valuable information that's now part of the Zonia video streaming platform. We've gathered knowledge from over 150 health experts on our platform. They cover everything related to reversing premature aging and improving healthy longevity in over 1,000 engaging and transformative short videos. Each of these videos is just 5 to 7 minutes long because we've decided to distill and simplify the most important actionable steps you can take to transform your life right now. If your goal is to cook rejuvenating foods, sleep better, reverse certain symptoms or prevent diseases from autoimmunity to gut issues, or if you've been struggling with chronic stress, depression and anxiety, Zonia will be your best friend in your journey towards living the best years of your life. But because the free screening of our series ends soon, I want to remind you that all 10 episodes of Ageless are part of Zonia's content, and you get to rewatch all the episodes whenever you want. But this offer is only valid if you join Zonia before the free screening of this series ends. If you join afterwards, all the other content will still be there, but the Ageless docuseries will be gone. So check all the information below and click the Join Zonia button today. A friendly reminder that Zonia starts from as low as $10 a month, and you are covered by our 7-day money-back guarantee. So this is really a no-brainer proposition for you, my friend. And remember, you have less than 72 hours to join Zonia and start taking action toward reclaiming your health. You might seriously want to take notes this time. Our experts have devoted their lives to saving people from premature aging, and throughout their careers, they've started noticing patterns. Now, they'll review everything they know about the best foods, supplements, and other techniques which will be your key to success in how to age starting today. But first, let's sum up everything you've learned so far in 5 simple categories.
Our approach to healthy aging has 5 components. So we'll separate them out here because humans like categories, but really they're all stuck together. The first category is your physical body. That's your bones, ligaments, tendons. That's your posture, how you sit. If you hunch over, you lower your testosterone, you raise your cortisol. If you are bigger, take up more space, you're actually perceived differently, and your testosterone goes up and your cortisol goes down. Both are good things. Then there's your chemistry. That's your minerals, your nutrients, your hormones, your digestion, your absorption. What are you eating? How often are you eating? Is it good for you? Then there's your emotional journey to health. This is a tough one for people, but it's their relationship to themselves. We're so cruel to ourselves. And so the kinder you can be, the more generous to yourself you can be, the healthier you will be. Because when you are mean to yourself, you set off a whole cascade of events that start with cortisol and end with poor digestion and unhealthy aging. Then there's the social journey to health. People need other people. We are not islands. We need community. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel like we're loved. And so finding a community, your tribe, as people say it, is really valuable for people. Actually, not just valuable, critical. And then there's your spiritual journey. So if you have no purpose in life, why does it matter to age gracefully? So it's finding what your why is and what your future is and who you're meant to be in the world and make a contribution. That's what gives people their purpose to eat well, exercise, get enough sleep, have good relationships. So it all ties together in this package that will support you in leading a life where you age gracefully.
Oftentimes when I present, people will ask me either on mic or when I come off the stage, well, how old are you? And I'm not embarrassed to tell you that I am 68 years old as I sit here today. And I'm in pretty good shape. Actually, we created a proprietary heart rate variability program that we analyze all of our devices that can actually show me what my biological age is. And today, as we speak, I'm 23 years younger. My biological age is 23 years younger than my physical age. So when people tune in and they're looking for techniques for anti-aging, I can just tell you what I do. And it's really very primal. I think about the elements: water, air, food, and sunlight, right? And if you look at those 4 areas, and which is part of what I look at when I study primal healing, is if I can filter my water and do my best in trying to make water the way nature intended water to be, that's what I'm taking in. And if I watch my foods, so now that's a tough one. It's not just about the diet, but even healthy foods like GMO-free or organic foods, they're still grown in an environment that could be toxic, either the air or the water that's feeding it. And so it's important to understand, to try and get the good foods that you can get, and then understand too that along with that comes a little baggage. And that brings me to my body of work, which is infrared sauna. I've been doing infrared saunas now for most of my life, but in particular, the last 25 years with my own equipment. And so I actually wake up very early in the morning, 4:35 in the morning. I use my sauna as an opportunity to actually not just sweat and detox, but also I meditate. I address my emotional side. I ask for forgiveness, which usually takes me about an hour, not really. And I also think about what I'm grateful for, and I think about what my intentions are for the day. I set my intentions. And so I think that's really important because in a way, earlier and before we talked about grounding, in a way that grounds me emotionally. And I think that's all part of your makeup. So many of my friends that have lived many really long years, when they ask the question, what is it that is their key to longevity, most of them say that they take care of themselves every day incrementally. They don't wait until they get sick. And they surround themselves with friends and with love and happiness and fun. And so if I were to say anything to you to give you my formula, that's pretty much it, what I just said.
We can look at a person's health best by analyzing what they eat. And you go to doctors, do they analyze what a person eats? No, they measure their blood pressure. They measure their cholesterol. They measure their blood glucose. But here's the thing. Do you have a normal blood pressure unmedicated? Do you have a normal cholesterol unmedicated? Are you at a perfect body weight? Are you eating a healthy diet? Do you have good exercise tolerance? In other words, you can't cover up these things with drugs and think you're okay. And what doctors do is they contribute to a person's ultimate premature demise by giving them pills to lower their blood pressure, because they didn't have the blood pressure pills or the cholesterol-lowering pills or the diabetic pills. They'd have to say to a person, look, you've got to start getting in shape now. You've got to start eating healthier, start eating more vegetables, cut out all the junk you're eating, cut out the oils, the sugars, the meats, eat more greens and beans and nuts, lose weight, exercise more, get the salt out of your diet, get your blood pressure down. Years ago, we didn't have diabetic medications. People had to get in shape, lose weight, and eat less to get their sugar down. But now we give them a pill so they can still stay overweight, eating a poor diet, and age prematurely. What I'm saying is it's not hard to tell a person's great health. Because let me tell you that there's only one proven methodology to slow aging and radically extend human lifespan. Just one, and here it is in 5 words. Moderate caloric restriction in the context of micronutrient excellence. That's 5 words. Moderate caloric restriction with micronutrient excellence. And I'm also saying that until you achieve micronutrient excellence, you can't comfortably achieve moderate caloric restriction. Because when your diet is low in nutrients, you become a calorie-consuming monster. But when you start eating healthy food and you're getting enough fiber, enough nutrients, you naturally desire less calories. And we have to become an instinctual eater. We're not always wanting more food than our body requires. If a person became overweight, we know they're eating not in response to true hunger, but either in response to toxic hunger or recreational eating, emotional eating, or some other perverted way of eating that they think is right because we're in a society where everybody in America is eating unhealthfully and gets heart attacks, strokes, and cancers. So if you want to eat what other Americans eat, then you're going to get what other Americans get, which is being overweight and a person who's prone to heart attacks, strokes, and cancers. Living to be 100 years old, and I'm saying the natural age for a healthy human should be between 97 and 107 years old. That's where the bells should really fall. And modern nutritional science has made sufficient and radical advances so people have an unprecedented opportunity in human history to hit that 97 to 107 age range. But they have to take advantage of these findings in nutritional science and really actually consume these nutrient-rich organic produce and remove from their diet these foods that sap away your lifespan and create chronic illness. Predominantly, we're talking here about processed foods and animal products. So I classify food into three categories. Processed foods, which are white flour products, oils, junk food, chips, pretzels, cookies, rice cakes, breakfast bars, cold cereals, whatever it is people are eating, fast foods. And the next category is animal products. And processed carbohydrates, they drive up insulin and make people get overweight. And animal products, the high protein people are eating in the modern world, the animal protein drives up IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. And these age us prematurely, and they promote cancer. So we have to remove both those things or greatly reduce both those things and eat these unrefined organic plant foods grown in rich soils. And the quality of the soil affects the quality of the food. And the quality of the plants we're eating is the quality of our cells and the nutrient density of our cells. And we have this opportunity, and they wouldn't be selling organic mushrooms and microgreens and baby lettuces and kale in the supermarket today if nobody knew about this. Obviously, some people know about the science because people are buying it. The supermarkets wouldn't stock this food if nobody was purchasing it. There's more people purchasing these superfoods. There's more people eating them. But the vast majority of people are still in the dark. The vast majority don't know that their health is in their hands, or you could say in their knife and on the end of their fork. You are what you chose to eat in your life. And we can control our health destiny, and we can try to disease-proof our body with this degree of nutritional excellence, which then can make us much more at peace, make us think better, more clearly, and have us be less angered and irritable, and be in more peace with ourselves. So what I'm saying right now, the secret to a healthy life, essentially, is having a good quality diet and making sure you're not deficient in any nutrients, having a degree of nutritional excellence, which combines an excellent diet with the conservative use of supplements to supplement the diet to make it excellent, not to push your level up to levels that are not to get mega nutrition that could be pushing you too much. Too much of something that's good could push you the other way. But excellent nutrition is the foundational point here. And if you don't eat healthy enough, you're not going to be able to control your ravenous appetite. If you were going to ask what's the most striking findings from the scientific literature over the last 5 years, the most striking and an amazing finding is that regulating protein in the diet can regulate your age, your risk of cancer, and how fast you're aging. What I'm saying is this. What we found of these studies that corroborate each other, different studies with large numbers of people looking at hard endpoints like death have now corroborated, giving a high degree of credence to show that more animal protein in the diet leads for shorter lifespans and more premature mortality. So high animal protein diets like paleo, keto, carnivore diets, if they're looking at people long-term following these higher protein diets, and sometimes with carbohydrate restricting, showing that those are the shortest lifespan people. And the highest lifespan individuals are people with more plant protein intake. That plant protein, higher levels of plant protein lead to a longer lifespan, and lower levels of plant protein don't do as well, showing that like macrobiotic diets or fruitarian diets, plant-based diets that are low in protein don't do as well as plant-based diets that are richer in protein. So even though animal protein pushes up IGF-1, which is a growth hormone, which the IGF-1 stands for, again, insulin-like growth factor 1, a primary growth hormone, which then can promote cellular replication and promote and allow cancer cells to replicate. Now, the insulin IGF-1 sandwich, when you advocate or when you elevate both insulin and IGF-1, you're in a very cancer-promoting hormonal environment. You want to keep insulin low and IGF-1 low. That's the hallmark of healthy centenarians, to keep both those hormones low. You can raise insulin with too much high glycemic carbohydrate or plant food. So the question is, how do we keep, and also when you get on a diet that's, you can say, higher glycemic and lower in protein in plants, you can push IGF-1 too low. And if it drops too low, you're not going to get the benefit because your immune system won't function well with some amount of IGF-1. So we need some plant protein because plant proteins can normalize IGF-1 but not allow it to get to higher levels that are dangerous. Whereas animal proteins have no shut-off valve. The extra animal proteins are converted too readily into IGF-1, whereas plant proteins, which are not as biologically complete proteins, they don't just shunt right to IGF-1. The body has to complete them, and it's not going to complete them unless it needs to make the IGF-1. The higher protein plant foods are green vegetables, beans, including soybeans, black beans, lentils, and nuts and seeds. And including greens, beans, and nuts and seeds, those higher protein plant foods are some of these new secrets we're distilling out of the scientific literature to enable people to live longer and healthier. The anti-aging phenomenon of self-repair and removing a body's toxins occurs when you're in a heightened state, when you're sleeping and not digesting. So that means more repairs going on during rest and sleep at night than there is during the day. And that repair that's going on at night, which is going to make you age slower, doesn't work well if your body's full of food and digesting food when you're sleeping. Which means a critical intervention here is finishing dinner earlier, by 5 or 6 o'clock, and having at least 4 hours of no food coming in before you go to bed at night. That means finish your dinner, shut down the restaurant, close the kitchen, clean everything away, put it away, clean your teeth, and don't go back to eat anything the rest of the night. And then enjoy the night. Play games, go for a hike, watch a movie, have fun, tell jokes, to have fun without revolving around food. Because a lot of our population recreates with food after dinner. The whole night long is one big eating occasion. And that's a major source of lifespan problems.
So when we look at the aging process, what does that look like? Well, we see a cognitive decline in mental acuity, in focus, concentration. We see a decline in muscle mass, bone density declines, visceral fat increases. We see a decline in subjectively energy levels, sense of vitality, sense of well-being. Often people tend to suffer from some psychological issues of anxiety, depression as they get older, disconnect from their partner as they age. All these are parts of aging. And we could look at those pathways of improving it. One of the common things we look at is how do we affect that mTOR pathway with protein to impact that muscle balance. And this is a really controversial topic because you're going to hear some other experts tell you that you need high protein. And high protein is incredibly important when we're building muscle. When we look at maintaining muscle density, muscle mass, we know that we need those amino acids, we need those proteins to build muscle. But on the other hand, we know that protein stimulates mTOR, and that mTOR activation is the opposite of what we want when it comes to longevity. And so this is where there's a lot of nuance and a lot of art involved in timing it, where you don't have protein every day, all day. And there's a balance there. I think that's really the key, where there has to be some nuance. And it's dangerous when we get into this one-size-fits-all model again of everyone needs to be on 150 grams of protein a day. There needs to be variation. And so what I like to do on that is there are certain days where you have very low protein and other days where you have high protein. And I would time that with your training as well. And so that's the key. That's the nuance that I think is really important when it comes to longevity, to optimize your body now, to optimize your muscle mass now, but also think about how can we promote longevity.
In order to reverse the clock, you want to consider several things. Food is probably the absolute most important. So if you are eating processed food or high glycemic and sugary type of diet, or grabbing things on the run without paying attention, or eating too much, that is going to really accelerate aging. So what I recommend is teaching your cells to run off of either fat or carbohydrates by potentially doing a modified ketogenic diet for about 4 to 6 weeks. See how your body does, and you may want to continue for a period of time. I don't recommend full ketogenic diet long term, but I do recommend teaching the cells to work off of both. Fasting, which is incredibly important because it will reset your immune system, turn on stem cells, help with mitochondrial biogenesis, the new mitochondria. That's something that once you've tried the ketogenic diet, it's very easy to ease into intermittent fasting or full 24-hour, 48-hour fasts. You want to consider your sleep cycle and making sure that you're getting 7 to 8 hours of good restorative sleep. You want to look at things like exercise. And it's very interesting that probably the best exercise for your mitochondria and for reverse aging is something called high intensity interval training, where you may do strength training for just a minute or so and then cardio for a minute and go back and forth. And that's another form of hormesis. So that will stress the body and train it in different ways that actually trigger more mitochondria formation. There are lots of supplements that can help reverse aging. So we've talked about things like NAD or any mitochondrial support, coenzyme Q10, L-carnitine, D-ribose, PQQ. These are all supplements that will feed right into the mitochondrial chain that helps produce more ATP. The more ATP and energy you have, the better all of your systems can run. Another important thing to consider when you're looking at ways to reverse or slow the clock is body detoxification. Detoxification is important for so many different reasons. Number one, when you have toxins, the very mitochondria that is determining how rapidly we age is incredibly sensitive to environmental toxins. So just giving the mitochondria a break, clearing the toxins out periodically. Also, toxins can affect our DNA directly. And toxins can just make us feel tired and lousy. So when we go through a detox intermittently, so I recommend patients take, whether it's supplements to upregulate the liver's phase 1 and 2 processes that remove toxins, or we get in things like an infrared sauna, which is one of my favorite things to do for detox. The infrared sauna, because of the different wavelengths that are in the light that you sit in, they penetrate deep. It goes deeper to your visceral organs, and then your organs are able to release toxins that maybe are hard to get out in other ways.
What protein sources are you going to get in, right? And what kind of fiber are you going to get in? And depending on what your activity level is, you may need more or less carbs than, say, someone who isn't very active. I exercise virtually every day. I don't think I train as hard as I used to, but I can get by with a little bit more starch because I need it in order to get glycogen on my muscle. And I think you have to be, I would say, focused on understanding, well, what's my genotype like for things like, can I handle saturated fat or not? So if you're an ApoE34 or 44, you really need to keep your saturated fat under 20 grams a day, or that's going to create inflammation, which is going to affect the gut. Probably one of the biggest things for the gut is getting enough fiber every day. You have to shoot for 40 grams of fiber a day. That's not easy to get. And if people aren't real active, they really don't need to be eating lots of grains to try to get it, because energy dense food, and they're not moving that much, right? So I have people take fiber supplements. So I like them taking guar gum, like a sun fiber, chia seeds, hemp hearts. Get the fiber in. Track how much fiber you're taking in, because when you eat fiber, that's actually the food for your microbiome. It's called resistant starch. So when you give your gut resistant starch, starch that does not break down, that's what your microbiome feeds on. And then it makes butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid, which fattens up your epithelial cells. It's fuel and food to keep your epithelial cells, remember that one cell layer thick cell that lines the intestine. That's why the microbiome is so important from the food side. You can take probiotics in addition to, prebiotics are basically resistant starches. But you can take probiotics too, and I do that regularly with people. The more I have people's guts balanced, I have them do their probiotics less frequently. They don't have to do them every day. They can do them every other day, every third day. Keeping the prebiotics on board, though, is much more important because I find that's where people fall short. Probably one of the biggest things that people can do to keep their gut intact, really learn to manage their stress. If you're stressed out and you're making a lot of cortisol, and cortisol triggers adrenaline and noradrenaline, that goes through the enteric nervous system, meaning the nervous system attached the brain to the gut. And what happens is that signals for the release of more histamine, increased gut permeability, so those epithelial cells that are supposed to be really tight together, they gap. And that's where you get that gut permeability. So when you have chronic elevated stress, you're more prone to have GI problems. And that's why people with irritable bowel, a lot of times, they have anxiety, they have nervousness, they may even be depressed because that gut-brain connection is real. So manage your stress, get in fiber, probiotics, look at the drug therapies you're on. If they have an effect on the microbiome, you probably ought to be taking a probiotic on a regular basis. Exercise, getting blood flow to the gut, also very important. Last one is, of course, getting enough sleep. And then understand the diet that's working for you to keep you at your best, I would say your best for your body type, because I have a bigger frame. There's no way I'm going to ever be 165 pounds. I'd have to lop a leg off, right? It's not going to happen. But I can keep my visceral fat down. Why is that important? When you have a lot of visceral fat, that fat actually is an inflammatory engine. It's called adipokines. Fat cells that are throwing off inflammatory compounds. Inflammatory compounds lead to gut breaking down. So it's really important that you realize trying to manage your weight is actually a great longevity strategy.
Isn't this incredible? With so many lessons, it's hard to name the most important one. Even though food has been mentioned so many times, it deserves the spotlight. In just a second, we'll discuss what foods to avoid to achieve optimal bodily function, including sexual health, skin health, and cognitive ability. So let's get started and first hear about the best foods for your skin coming from our beauty expert, Trina Felber.
I always say you can eat your skincare. Like you should be able to eat your skincare, and your skincare should come from the exact same thing as your diet. So when you're talking about what should you eat to make your skin look better, it should really be things that have nutritional value. So red raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, all the berries are loaded in antioxidants and vitamins. You want to make sure that you're getting some good protein. And anything that is really not going to increase the inflammation in the body. So for people, that's different for everyone. If you have allergies or sensitivities, obviously you want to stay away from those types of things. Staying away from gluten as much as possible and staying away from sugar is huge for your skin. Not only for the rest of your body, but your skin as well, because sugar just breaks down a lot of the infrastructure of your skin because of the inflammation it creates.
When it comes to sexual health, the biggest thing that we can do is actually focus on our diet. Especially for men, the number one thing that's going to contribute to actually failing erections is going to be two things in your diet: high amounts of sugar and high amounts of seed oils. So sugar is going to be predominant in pretty much everything. And I'm lumping alcohol into this as well, because alcohol is technically a sugar. But if we think about it, all the sugar in our body over time that's not being processed correctly, whether you're pre-diabetic, diabetic, the sugar going through your bloodstream is almost like a hailstorm. Your blood and your body do not like that sugar at all. And it's very corrosive. So it starts making contact with the blood vessels, and it's little damage here, more damage here. Well, what happens? The body has to repair that. In comes cholesterol. Cholesterol actually comes in and start to patch up all that damage. But here's the other weird thing. It shoots your levels of cholesterol up, of course, because now the cholesterol's in your bloodstream. So then what happens? The gentleman goes to his doctor. Maybe he didn't quite mention the diet changes. Maybe he hasn't quite gotten to the erectile dysfunction part of it. But his doctor is going to see that on his cholesterol panel, his levels have gone up. What happens next? It's a statin. Here's the other interesting thing to that. Not only is cholesterol the repair molecule, cholesterol is also the starting molecule of all of our hormones, including testosterone in men. So we see this cascade now. The cholesterol went up as a response to repairing something in the body. The doctor put you on the medication that's going to stop your cholesterol and lower your cholesterol levels. Well, now two things are going to happen. All the damage that was happening as a result of the excess sugar intake in the diet is still going to continue nicking those blood vessels, but now there's no cholesterol left to repair it. And two, now your hormones are going to go down because now that starting molecule has been completely taken away as well. At the next follow-up with that doctor, yeah, your cholesterol is going to look great, but now you're going to have erectile dysfunction, and now you're going to have cardiovascular disease, because now it's likely going to be spreading to the heart and all those other areas, because again, your body now no longer has the ability to repair with the necessary cholesterol. So what do? we stop the sugar intake. The interesting thing, though, too, is that it's not just the sugar, and this is why I mentioned the seed oils. These two are actually two bandits, two peas in a pod. They work together. Because here's the other thing. Our body has the ability to handle sugar. We can produce insulin. We have the ability to clear it. We're made to utilize it when it's there. The problem is, are we actually consuming it in the presence of seed oils, or are seed oils in our diet? So seed oils are pretty much anything like canola oil, grapeseed oil, vegetable oils, corn oils. I even go so far as to say things like avocado oil and olive oil can be looped in there depending on your sourcing, right? And the bad thing about these oils is that they exist in a form that isn't really native to our bodies, and it's not going to be giving us a lot of really useful stuff. Well, our body is going to use whatever we give it, right? Even if it's utilizing something that isn't necessarily good for it, it's going to make do with what it has. But just like we have the 3 little piggies and one of them has the ability to build that really strong brick house, well, maybe now our body shifted to building that straw house or that stick house because it's working with the tools that we gave it. Well, when the big bad wolf comes along, that's going to be your other chronic diseases, the other stuff in your bad diet, it's going to damage those way more easily, way more readily. So now, because all of your cells become built of those fats, this is because every single cell has what we call a phospholipid bilayer. That layer gets built of 2 fats, the phospholipid bilayer, 2 layers of fats. And when it gets built dysfunctionally with the fats that shouldn't be there, the cell actually can't function as well as it should. So even though sugar's coming in, well, maybe now we can't produce enough insulin for it, or we can't handle the amount of sugar that's coming in. Or when the sugar's coming in and it's causing damage, well, the cell's already somewhat damaged and now it's just going haywire. So this 1-2 punch is really, I believe, is at the heart of a lot of the dysfunction that we see today, especially when it comes to men's health and erectile dysfunction. When it comes to deciding what oil you want to use to cook with, I would absolutely suggest staying away from seed oils. And if I had to give you just even one piece of advice for your health that's going to move the needle in a meaningful way, it's going to be avoiding seed oils. The way that these things are processed, a lot of people don't know this, they were actually initially a leftover product from the oil refinery industry. Isn't that crazy? Now, something like canola oil, for example, you almost can't walk into a restaurant these days without them using that as their cooking oil. The consumption of seed oils will do one main thing to people that they will start to notice as they get older, or the more that you've consumed it over time. And it's this: you will actually develop an intolerance to sunlight. So if a person has started to get older and they realize that they can't spend as much time in the sun, or they burn so much easier, or they just don't recover as well, or their skin in general has lost its youthfulness, its shine, that, my friend, is seed oil toxicity. The best way to actually combat this is to get that stuff out of the diet and make sure that you are selecting, if you are going to select an oil, to make sure that it is a really, really high quality one. Now, in most grocery stores, there was actually a statistic, and I forget the exact numbers, but something like 80% of even the avocado oils that are present in the grocery stores are adulterated or rancid. So the selection of these things, because if you are going to be putting something into your system that's rancid, what that's causing is something called oxidative damage. And it's that oxidative damage that basically leads to inflammation and leads to disease. And if we're cooking all of our meals in this, if we're putting this on our salads as salad dressings, all of these things are just going to be slowly eating away at us over time, right? The Chinese have a word for this. It's called ling qi. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. And every time we're consuming that seed oils in small amounts at the restaurants, at the stuff in our packaged goods, we're giving ourselves a nice ling qi.
There was a fascinating study published in the British Medical Journal in the late spring of 2021. And here's what it showed. They took a couple of different groups of people. One group, they had increased the amount of omega-3s that they eat and decreased the amount of omega-6s. And here's what happened. 3 months later, these people went from having, on average, 16 headache days a month down to 9. They did nothing else other than make those 2 simple dietary changes. This was earth-shattering in the field of migraine and nutrition because it's very unusual to get a study that shows such robust results from a simple dietary intervention to help people increase the omega-3s. And at the same time, they decreased common sources of omega-6s, which is things like vegetable oil, corn oil, canola oil. So those simple changes resulted in a dramatic, almost 50% reduction in headaches just in the space of 3 months. Very, very powerful study.
This is groundbreaking. We were scared of fat for so many years, only to learn later that good fats are actually healthy. Another myth is that we need a certain number of meals per day and that breakfast is the most important one. Today, we know this isn't true. With fasting, we can optimize digestion, metabolism, and energy levels in a very short period of time. If you've been used to eating 3-4 meals a day your whole life, I understand this concept might seem a bit scary. So our experts will present you with a variety of methods to avoid the negative effects of fasting and which diets to choose if you don't want to go all in yet. Listen in.
We also should be incorporating regular fasting and ideally nutrient cycling. So occasionally going without carbs or with lower levels of fat or with lower levels of protein in our diet. we want to incorporate that cycling in, and food in general, which is the most important one. So reducing food input into the system occasionally also serves as a challenge to the mitochondria. And also, in addition to that, provides a period of time for them to go into a very catabolic state where they do mitochondrial cleanup processes, autophagy and mitophagy. And this is basically quality control at the mitochondrial level. So it allows the body to identify mitochondria that are dysfunctional and damaged, and they send that segment off. They pinch off a little segment of the damaged portion of mitochondria, or the whole damaged mitochondria itself. They send it to the lysosomes where it gets degraded and broken down, and it allows them to maintain a healthy pool of mitochondria. Those processes are critical for having healthy, highly functional, highly energetic mitochondria. And of course, in the modern world, we have way too much food input for way too many hours of the day. We don't have adequate fasting windows. And because of that, this quality control process of mitophagy, which happens predominantly in the fasted state, is not able to do its job of quality control of our mitochondria. So we accumulate lots of damaged mitochondria.
The importance of digestion and the role of fasting is really an important one. When we're not giving our bodies an opportunity to fully digest and absorb our food, which is what's happening in our modern day lifestyle, only 7 to 8% of Americans are metabolically healthy. So it really is, this is a public health disaster in the making. So really understanding that digestion starts in our brains. So it's important to not be in a stressed out state. Don't be eating while you're driving in your car, yelling at your kids, arguing with your spouse, really making sure you're making time to optimize digestion. And then understanding that if your digestion starts in your brain, not only do you want to be in a state of relaxation, but you also don't want to be eating constantly. And so we've been training our patients for years that they should be eating 3 meals a day plus snacks in between. And I'm here to remind people that this is completely contrary to the way that our bodies evolved. We are designed to eat less frequently. We wouldn't be here as a species if that weren't the case. Going through periods of time where we had no food, or periods of famine, and then having periods where you're feasting, where you actually have an opportunity to sit down and eat. Now, obviously, now we have accessibility to food in every kind of combination. We can do Uber Eats, we can go to restaurants, we can eat at our homes, but it's important to understand that when we're talking about nutrition and we're talking about the value of eating less frequently, it's so that our body can be properly optimized. And when I think about some of the key physiologic things that go on in the body when we're eating less frequently, there's something called the migrating motor complex, and it's like a street sweeper in our digestive system. And we really need 4 hours in between meals so that we can optimize digestion. And one of the things that I think is so important if we're talking about fasting and digestion and kind of perpetuity is understanding that it's not common to be bloated. It should not be common or accepted to be bloated, to be constipated, to have diarrhea, to have cramping and pain all the time. And yet that seems to be the commonality. And once people eat less frequently, all of a sudden a lot of those symptoms improve substantially. And so I think fasting and giving our bodies time to properly break down and absorb our nutrients is a really important thing to lean into. So in terms of different types of fasting, we've talked about the 16-8, which is 16 hours fasted in an 8-hour feeding window where most people are consuming two to three meals depending on the individual. There are also different types of fasting. And for some people, if they're new to fasting, some of these other types might seem to be a little less intense. So there's alternate day fasting where literally people consume their normal meals and then on the next day they do a 24-hour fast. And so they're alternating days of normal feeding with days of completely fasting. Now, in terms of looking at some of the improvements that you might see with that, for some people, if they're new to fasting, that might seem less overwhelming. They may just eat a lot of food on one day and then they're not eating a lot of food. I find for a lot of people that are trying to break through plateaus, so if they're weight loss resistant, they're trying to kind of change things up, really help with insulin resistance, really kind of drive down cravings, having that 24-hour digestive rest period can be very beneficial. There are also things like a 5-2, and the 5-2 can be looked at a variety of different ways, but it's typically 5 days of your normal eating pattern and then 2 days of it can either be 2 days of a 24-hour fast spaced out through the week, or it can also be, 500 calories or less per day if you are a male or female. And for some people, that seems to be a little less overwhelming as they're kind of easing their transition into fasting. Now, I think a lot of it has to be, we want things to be sustainable. So people watching might feel like, okay, I'm not ready to do fasting every single day, so I may embrace the concept of just having one meal twice a week, and that might be the first thing that I'm kind of stepping into. When we're looking at longer fasts, some people are really, they're really working on gut health, and sometimes doing a 2 to 3 day fast can allow their body to kind of optimize digestion, can allow for some stem cell activation. There are specific types of cells in the epithelial lining of the intestine that can be beneficially impacted upon by going longer into fasts. And I think a lot of this really speaks to understanding that there's no one-size-fits-all philosophy. And I have many, many patients that when they're weight loss resistant, we do a lot more combinations. Maybe they're doing a 30/16, meaning they may fast for 30 hours, eat within a 16-hour window, and then they go back to another 30 hours. And so it's really designed to kind of shake things up. Our metabolisms, as I remind people, much like everything, we don't want to do the same thing every single day. So having strategies where you can kind of go in and, optimize things. One of the other favorite ways that I will, coach people through fasting is doing a 5-1-1, which is 5 days of doing your, normal fasting pattern. And then you'll have, one 24-hour fast, and then you'll have a refeeding day. And a refeeding day is not a pig out day. It is designed to kind of remind your body that you're getting a little bit more mTOR activation, so a little bit more muscle protein synthesis. You're consuming usually a bit more protein on those days, so it might break it down into 3 separate meals. But I do find for a lot of people that is a particular benefit, doing the 5-1-1, and then they can space it out. I know for myself, I typically like to recommend, have your Saturday be your feasting day. Again, you're not pigging out. It's typically more protein intake, usually split over 3 meals, and then do a 24-hour fast the next day. And I find for a lot of people that shakes things up. It's also good mentally to have opportunities where you're not fasting, because you can really lean into your body's cues, but it's important for people to understand that our bodies like variety, and we don't talk enough about that, whether it's food frequency, meal frequency, etc. It's important to practice some degree of variation. I think it goes without saying that we know there are gender differences. Men can fast differently than women can. So taking into account your gender is certainly very important, and leaning into that. I think it's also important, if you're on medication, if you're on diabetes medication, high blood pressure medication, etc., having a conversation with your healthcare provider. I do find that most healthcare providers are very supportive of fasting as a strategy to kind of harness metabolic health, but having a conversation, because you may actually require more maintenance. You may need to be on less blood pressure medication or diabetes medication. And so the other thing that I really think about is, what life stage are you in? So women in menopause are going to have less variability in hormones than younger women. And so really understanding where you are, not only in your menstrual cycle, but where are you life stage if you are a female, because there are certain strategies that we have to embrace at those different stages. So these are some of the common side effects I will see with intermittent fasting. I would say number one, commonly because people are not utilizing electrolytes in a fasted state, and it's important to understand why electrolytes are so important. Electrolytes are things like potassium, magnesium, chloride, sodium, and we lose these. If we are in an unfed state and we're eating a lower carbohydrate diet, we will actually have renal losses of sodium in our urine, meaning we will urinate out these electrolytes. And when you don't replace the electrolytes, that's when we can experience headaches, we can get cramping, we may feel tired, we may experience some hangriness where we're kind of hungry and angry. And that can be a direct reflection of this loss of electrolytes. So we absolutely want to replace electrolytes. I would say other things that can happen, not all that common, but I do see, younger women that are still menstruating, that can get changes in their menstrual cycle. Not that it goes away, but maybe their cycle's shorter, maybe it's longer. That should improve in 1 to 2 cycles. However, if your cycle goes away entirely and you're not pregnant, that may be a sign that intermittent fasting is not working for you. It may be too much stress to the body.
The average American ate a meal and a half every day in the mid-1800s. The ancient Spartans ate 1 meal a day. It used to be normal, right? Now we're eating 3 square meals a day is marketing, right? Snacks between meals is marketing from the 50s and the 70s. It's actually, now we're learning eating less. There's a lot of interesting research from Dr. Walter Longo out in California, where doing these things actually with mice, for example, it makes them live 25 to 30% longer. It lowers your risk for neurological issues, and it lowers your risk for cancers. Actually, a fasting state is anti-cancer. Yet 6 cells with mold and Lyme and cancer actually die because their cell function is not as good in a fasting state. So that the fasting mimicking diet is just trying to get that advantage without the actual fasting. That's a very, very powerful health tool. There are many ways you can try to mimic fasting in addition to the fasting mimicking diet. The first thing you do is you can actually just fast for 3 to 5 days, a water fast, which most people don't do, so I won't talk about that a whole lot. The second thing you can do is you can do a 24-hour water fast once a week. So the idea is that once a week you do a 24-hour fast, and a lot of people can do that. It's not open to many people, but you can do that. And you're not getting the effects are not as potent as a 3 to 5 day water fast, but if you do it consistently, once a week for 3 months, you actually can get similar effects. The next thing is called interval fasting. Interval fasting is another way to try to get the effects of fasting, but while you still eat. And so the idea with interval fasting is you might eat in a 6 or 8 hour window. So let's say you eat dinner at 6 o'clock, you wouldn't consume any calories till 10 to 12 the next day. So you're actually every day having a fast for 5 days a week. Then you get into fasting mimicking diets. There's another way to kind of get this benefit. With fasting mimicking diets, it's usually over 5 days. During those 5 days, you eat about 750 calories, and you have certain ratios. The ratios are probably about 30 to 40% of what you eat is fat, about 10 to 20% is carbohydrates, and about 30% is proteins. And you get that ratio. Now you can eat throughout the day. Okay, there's usually 5 little snacks to keep you satiated, drink lots of fluids, of course. And that's another way to mimic the effects. So between a fasting mimicking diet, between interval fasting, between 1 day water fast or 3 to 5 day water fast, you're trying to harness the power of your body's ability to heal. And that's the thing about fasting. Fasting is literally, we were designed or made to self-heal and repair. In order for our bodies to maximally do that, we have to have times of want in addition to times of plenty. If you take a plant and you water it every day a ton, what happens? They die. They get overwatered. If you feed an animal too much, they get overweight and they get all these health issues. The exact same thing with humans. We have to give our bodies a rest from calories to let our body detoxify better. You're actually fasting, your body makes more stem cells when you fast. regenerative health, hyperbaric oxygen, peptides, exosomes, all this crazy stuff. Fasting does the exact same thing.
We need to go back to how do we eat to best genetically match ourselves and nourish and fuel ourselves and prevent chronic illness. We never ate as much or as often as we do today. We've been giving the terrible advice of no matter what, don't skip a meal, breakfast, the best meal of the day. And I'm telling you here, the people who do the best, the blue zones, the octogenarians, the longest living people on the planet eat the least. In fact, where we keep giving all this credence to the Mediterranean diet, what the reality is it may be more related to the fact that in the Orthodox Greek tradition, they fast 200 days a year. So it's like, maybe it's about not what they're eating, it's about when they're eating or when they're not eating. And so we've gotten so afraid of being hungry, and we use food as such a self-soothing mechanism that it is terrifying for people to imagine going 4 hours without a snack or skipping a meal or, for the love of God, going 24 hours without eating. And yet it is one of the most profound therapies we can use across the board in chronic illness, but in cancer in particular. We were showing back in the 1800s, and even a great paper by Dr. Moreshi in 1909, just fasting shrunk tumor burden more than 50 to 75%, depending on the situation. And we fasted our cancer patients regularly until the 1970s, and someone got a wild hair to say, that's really bad. We can't do that. We have to feed them. And now we give them brochures and booklets on how to fill themselves up with Dairy Queen blizzards and angel food cake. It's like, and ensure shakes, which the only thing they ensure is an untimely death. And so we've moved so far from anything rational, and we've allowed industries and corporate interests to drive the narrative that is not at all in sync with who we innately are.
Anybody can fast, and as you've just heard, there are many ways to go about it. The beauty of this healing process is that you don't need to go extreme from the start. You can start by introducing windows of fasting or smaller meals, and this will be effective too. So what about the menu itself? You need to know how to pick foods that will increase your energy and nourish your body as much as possible. Again, these dietary changes don't need to be hardcore. Tune in for the next section where our experts will reveal proven herbs used for centuries by different cultures, as well as one specific group of foods that rarely gets any attention but is critically important for your health.
When you look at all the cultures, since the beginning of recorded medicine, the most valuable herb in each culture are called adaptogens. Why are adaptogens so important? Because it turns out that one of the biggest things that really accelerates our aging is when we get under something called allostatic load, meaning that our brain no longer can counter the effect of chronic stress. It changes the way it starts to behave. So it starts to make more stress hormones. It doesn't make as much signals to go to your sex hormones. So you start to turn off your sex hormones. You turn off the adequate release of growth hormone. The big controversy is growth hormone bad or good. You're supposed to release growth hormone. You're not supposed to inject a ton of growth hormone in you, which creates an excess, right? So it's about balance. But the other piece is, as I get under stress, now I become more insulin resistant. My blood pressure goes up. I store more fat. Adaptogens help your brain to modulate or balance the effect of chronic stress. So since the beginning of time, all cultural medicine has seen that stress is probably the most important thing that we deal with in terms of aging. And that's why adaptogens were so revered. So whether you look at ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, cordyceps, a variety of schizandra, there's a variety of adaptogens. And everybody thinks adaptogens work on your adrenal glands. Adaptogens work on your brain to make you more resilient to the stress that you're being faced with day in and day out.
Some of the top herbs to focus on for healthy aging are really the herbs that are high antioxidant. Now, there's this thing called the ORAC scale, and it had a lot more spotlight years back, early 2000s, I believe. And rightfully, the spotlight turned down on it somewhat because it's not the be-all and end-all that it once was supposed to be. However, what the ORAC score basically measures is a food and a spices and an herb's antioxidant power. And without getting into the nuances of why it's not the holy grail, but still you want to turn to herbs, especially on this, is because there's a lot more to it than just how high in antioxidants any given herb or spice is, right? Because it also is about things like digestibility, absorbability in the body. That said, you really cannot go wrong if you are incorporating herbs into your diet in any way possible, herbs and spices that are high on the ORAC scale. Some herbs and spices are so high on that scale that I will promise you, nature promises you, forget about me, that you're going to get one incredible load of benefits out of those herbs and spices. So one of, if not the highest ORAC herb is cloves. Cloves. And I'll tell you what, every day I have from the grocery store, nice and inexpensive, cloves that some people during the holidays like Thanksgiving stick in ham. I chew on these during the course of a day. First of all, it freshens my breath, but that's the least of it. Those cloves are loaded with antioxidants, and a lot of people are unaware, specifically when it comes to cloves, the benefits. It contains a compound, for example, called eugenol, potent anti-cancer, potent for your heart health, potent for virtually every aspect of your health. Another one everyone has heard of, it's called cinnamon. Cinnamon. Now you want to be sure you get Ceylon, C-E-Y-L-O-N, cinnamon, but very high in antioxidants and outstanding, again, for multiple components of your health, probably especially heart health. Certainly helps if you have cholesterol issues, triglyceride issues, but it's a potent herb. One that a lot of folks are now starting to hear of, an herb called amla, or Indian gooseberry. I call it the fountain of youth herb because it's sky high in antioxidants, including a lot of very unique antioxidants. You can consume it, usually in a supplement form. In the case of amla, you could eat it, but it's a very sour, big berry, basically. But you can consume it by mouth. You can look for skin products that contain it. It's outstanding for your skin, sky high in vitamin C and other unique antioxidants that really is powerful against the appearance of wrinkles and sagging skin and things like that. And for your body, almost universal benefits. It's one of the three components of Triphala, which in Ayurvedic medicine is kind of the holy grail, if you will, of herbs. And it's a mix of three different herb compounds, including amla. So those are a few key herbs to look for.
People want to know what herbs or supplements or things that they can do to really boost their energy. It depends on what is the root cause of your fatigue. I'd say the gateway root cause for most people is that hormone triangle. And that one is very much about, so you want to take herbs and things that support your stress response. So some of my favorite ones would be ashwagandha. People who are stressed out and anxious and tired, ashwagandha can be a really nice herb to use for that. Being sure that you have the right amount of B vitamins for you is great because the adrenal gland needs B vitamins to be able to manufacture its adrenal hormones. It also needs magnesium and vitamin C, so making sure you have optimal levels of that for your adrenal glands so that you can create the cortisol that you need to have a proper stress response. So that's very, very important. The way I know somebody has mitochondrial dysfunction is that they have something called post-exertional malaise. They do more than what is normal for them in a day, and they pay for it. They're extra tired. If you have post-exertional malaise and mitochondrial dysfunction is one of your problems, then I love to give people what I call mitofood, which is CoQ10. It's really important for the mitochondria, as is resveratrol. It's a great product. It's great for the mitochondria, and D-ribose. And also anything that stimulates, D-ribose is the sugar that's for mitochondria, and that can be actually used clinically to help people see if that is going to help them. And also stimulating anything for the NAD, NADH process. There are supplements, precursors for that, and even just recently been looking into hydrogen water as a possibility to really boost that system. I think it's really best if we can get food-based B vitamins, food-sourced B vitamins, rather than synthetic. They tend to work a lot better in the body and be a lot more bioavailable to us.
One of the often overlooked foods for anti-aging, metabolic, regenerative, biohacking, whatever you want to call it, are fermented foods. So we focused on prebiotics, which are fibers that feed bacteria, and then we start focusing on probiotics, which are the actual bacteria. Now we're realizing there's things called postbiotics. So all of a sudden, you eat fiber, the bacteria in your gut turn into butyrate, and butyrate helps heal your brain. Actually, butyrate is an anti-brain aging, anti-inflammatory, and it's actually made in your GI tract when you eat fiber with the bacteria in your gut. Well, fermented foods come with all that together. We talk about taking digestive enzymes to help with digestion, right? Fermented foods already have digestive enzymes. Fermented foods, you take a little bit of acid, a little apple cider vinegar to help digest your food. All of a sudden, fermented foods have all that in there. It's amazing how many ancient cultures realize this, that through it already had fermented foods built into the caked into the mix, so to speak. So one of the things I'm doing more and more with patients, as we've learned your gut health is super critical for brain function, as we've learned your gut health is super critical for inflammation and heart disease, the best way to keep your gut healthy is to actually consume a complete food source that has enzymes in it, that has natural acids in it. Acetic acid actually is one of the few short-chain fatty acids that actually goes to your brain, help heal your brain. Well, that's what's in fermented foods. You have actually the postbiotics, the things that bacteria make that actually help modulate your gut immune system. So fermented foods are an often overlooked superfood that anybody can make it at home. My grandma used to make sauerkraut, Korean patients that make kimchi and bring it to me in my office. These are super easy things to make that are powerful longevity anti-aging foods that no one's really talking about.
What I'm doing now with my patients, everybody, we should just all be doing this, is how can we incorporate fermented foods in our diet? And, some people like kimchi and sauerkraut. Great, those are very good for you. But some people don't like those. And so as an alternative, I have people eating there's a couple of really healthy coconut yogurts. You can just eat even a few bites of it, and there's just billions of probiotics that are coming from that fermentation process. So I think that's something that not everybody knows about yet, the whole incorporate the fermented foods into the diet. Another thing to me that's very important in the diet is that people are eating lots of healthy fats. And, you know, we've grown up, a lot of us, with being told that we need to eat low fat, that that's healthy for our heart. And it turns out some people say that was the biggest medical mistake of the last century. So our brain is mostly fat. If you think about it, you've seen brains, it's this spongy tissue, right? That's fat, that's cholesterol. We need that fat. And then the neurons in our brain, around each neuron is a myelin sheath that helps to conduct the impulses down the neurons, and that's made of fat and phospholipids. One of the problems we have is some people come in with very low cholesterol levels, and that is very detrimental to the brain. So it's for some people, it's really helping them to incorporate lots of healthy fats in their diet, because cholesterol is a precursor to all your hormones. So if your cholesterol is low, not only is your brain structure suffering, but that makes your estrogen, your testosterone, your progesterone, it makes your DHEA, it makes your thyroid hormones. So if you have a very low cholesterol, that needs attention.
I couldn't agree more. None of these foods are new, yet no one seems to be talking about them. Instead, we get distracted by fancy packaging and marketing slogans. Next, we want to pay special attention to another very important topic: natural supplementation. Our experts will cover specific supplements that are of critical importance if you're aiming towards a calm, steady aging experience. They can help you with sleep, anxiety, handling hormonal imbalances, or even with neurodegenerative diseases. Interestingly, all of our experts mentioned one essential supplement. What is it? Stay tuned.
When it comes to the supplements, there's 4 good uses for them, and I call it the 4 S's of supplementation. The first one is critical because the human body is designed to have all kinds of nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, the essential fatty acids, the antioxidants, phytonutrients, trace elements. All this is supposed to come from the ground and from the food that we eat. Food isn't what it used to be when both my grandfathers were growing food way up in Canada. It's all farmed commercially, and the soils have been depleted. So the first reason to take supplements is to substitute for what's missing in food. Even organic food, of course we're eating organic because we want to avoid the poisons that they put on it. And so we avoid poison, but is it really that much more nutritious? Maybe a little bit. So you still need to substitute, again, the vitamins, minerals, and so on. And that's a great place for supplementation. Now, another use, because we're seeing people who, again, they're in this downward spiral of chronic degenerative conditions, metabolic chaos. So you can use certain supplements for stimulate the immune system. If I fly, I take something to stimulate my immune system, the zinc and echinacea, whatever it might be. You can stimulate as you please when you understand which supplements to use for which problem. The other S, so that's 2 S's, substitute what's missing in food, stimulate as needed, support. People walking around in this constant, catabolic state. They need adrenal support. You need your B vitamins. You can use all of these adaptogens. And you can even use glandular products like pulverized desiccated liver or adrenal or whatever it is. There's all kinds of organs. So now we have substitution, we have stimulation, we have support, maybe digestive support. People have weak stomach acid. They don't have the enzymes, they're not producing them. While they're in this state of repair, which hopefully we get them on, they're still going to need that support for certain systems or organs. And last but not least, I'm not sure this is really a supplementing, but self-treatment. Let's say we do find someone with parasites, bacteria, funguses, and so on. They might want to go to a physician and get a prescription, and they might not. And so there are tried and true, time-honored, 1,000-year-old remedies for some of these things, and we call that self-treatment. So that's the 4 S's of supplementation.
I'm a big believer in adaptogenic support. And so I use and created a combination, which is with maca. Maca is a root that is originally from Peru. It grows at the high altitude. The story is that the old Incan warriors would take maca before they went into battle to give them stamina and energy and to recoup resilience, right? So I wanted to understand what was in this maca. And it was really interesting because it has a high amount of arginine, which increases nitric oxide, which is how Viagra works, right? And it's so good for heart health and energy and resilience and recovery. Another supplement I love is magnesium. Magnesium is needed in over 200 processes in our body and is often depleted in the food we're eating because of mineral depleted soil. So supplementing with magnesium, and the type of magnesium matters. I use a formula with magnesium L-threonate and magnesium glycinate. So these are chelated magnesiums. The magnesium L-threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it's good for memory, it's good for sleep, it's good for anxiety, and it helps with restless legs too, another very common complaint. And then from there, oh my gosh, I've got a lot more. But you multivitamin and minerals, so having that. A probiotic is beneficial, supporting your adrenals. And we do that with adaptogen, with Mighty Maca Plus, but you can also use DHEA. I take CoQ10, and CoQ10 is really important. Again, I have a family history of heart disease on both sides of my family. So I do functional testing, and you can see by analysis with organic acids that I had CoQ10 insufficiency. And again, it's very common in people with cardiovascular disease in their family. So CoQ10 is important for mitochondrial function, and I love it. And I typically supplement with a clean form of around 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams a day. Another supplement is carnitine. Carnitine, again, is good for mitochondria. It's good for muscle.
When you talk about minerals, you have to realize we talk about chelates. The metal with something attached to it helps it go to where it's supposed to go. So for magnesium citrate, for example, it's a form of magnesium that helps your kidney function better. It helps with alkalinization of your urine, so for prevention of kidney stones. It also helps move your bowels. So if you have constipation, magnesium citrate would be a better form. There's actually a magnesium threonate. Now, threonate or threonine is an amino acid, and that magnesium tends to get more in your brain. Well, you need magnesium everywhere. So if someone has a neurological issue, neuropathy, Alzheimer's, like a magnesium threonate might be a better form to get it into their brain. Magnesium glycinate, another amino acid. Glycine is interesting because glycine turns into GABA, which is your chill neurotransmitter. It's your rest neurotransmitter. So if someone has anxiety, has blood pressure issues, or sleep issues, magnesium glycinate's a better form. And this is where it gets kind of interesting because there's even magnesium bisglycinate, which is 2 glycines for 1 magnesium. Those are the people that really have like anxious kind of running thoughts at night, that have a hard time calming down. Using that magnesium bisglycinate form would be more helpful for that. There's magnesium oxide, which I tend not to use. And this is where it gets tricky because if you go to a pharmacy and buy random magnesium, it's probably magnesium oxide, which is a synthetic magnesium. If you ever heard of zinc oxide or titanium oxide, right? These are white coatings in pills, and paint. White paint is titanium. I use the titanium oxide in it. I tend not to like this form of magnesium. It's the cheapest form you can get. If you go to a typical pharmacy, it's what you're going to get there. I educate people about it more to tell them don't get this one versus the other ones. There's magnesium taurate. So it's interesting how important magnesium is for heart function. There's so many people who have heart issues. The heart doesn't work as well with heart failure, cardiomyopathy, blood pressure issues, and the magnesium taurate tends to help more. The taurate is actually an amino acid that helps with muscle function, and the taurate or taurine also helps your liver detoxify a little better as well. Taurine or taurate is one of the amino acids that actually helps detoxification, phase 2 detoxification. So again, all these options, and so finding someone that can help you navigate that based on your health history is really huge, because which magnesium you take. And you take this, and this applies to vitamin D, this applies to vitamin C, this applies to your B vitamins. Like literally every nutrient has a different form that work for a different person in a different way. And I really love this part of medicine because this is way more complicated.
We know that we need magnesium to relax our muscles. We need magnesium to convert T4 to T3. We need magnesium for sleep, for optimal sleep, and even for our brain to function. We can get into boron, which strengthens our bones. It helps keep our sex hormone binding globulin in check. So when SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, raises, that's going to bind onto free testosterone, that hormone that we need. So we don't want SHBG to go high. Let's add in some boron. Let's add in some magnesium. The other nutrient that I absolutely love as we're aging is Tonkat Ali. Now, we're starting to hear a little bit of Tonkat in the media because a couple big podcasters have talked about it. But I love that they're talking about it because it has such potent properties. It helps to raise testosterone naturally. It helps to raise growth hormone naturally. And it supports just a healthy immune system. It helps balance cortisol, and it strengthens our bones. And bonus, it's an aphrodisiac. So as we're aging, when we add in that Tonkat, we get a vast array of protection. We get support for our hormones, and we get a little bit of help with the libido too. So the basic supplements that we need as we age, we have to cover just the basics with vitamin D, a good B complex, methylated Bs, zinc, magnesium, and then we can get more nuance for each individual. So that's where we can bring in things like Tonkat Ali to support testosterone, Tribulus terrestris is to support testosterone. There's also some natural supplements that help with thyroid function, like iodine, like T2, which is 3,5-diodo-L-thyronine, and even L-tyrosine itself. All help support the thyroid to function better, which then downstream helps support the sex hormones, and it also helps with insulin balance. So one of the big things with aging, I always say, you want to age quickly, keep your insulin up. So another supplement that I really like to use is berberine, because that keeps blood sugar and insulin low, and that's going to help with all disease states of aging. So it's going to keep your weight down. It's going to keep your insulin down, which then protects your brain. Alzheimer's is now called type 3 diabetes because it's driven by high insulin. So when we bring in berberine, we use that as like a biohacking ongoing supplement, it's keeping people's insulin levels low, and that protects them from cancer. It protects them from Alzheimer's. It keeps their weight down. It helps with diabetes. It helps with so many things. I absolutely love berberine too.
We always want to try to maximize the nutrients we can get from our diet and first, right? You want to try to get as many nutrients as you can from your food first, but that's not always possible, right? Sometimes we fall short, or sometimes because of a condition that we have or digestive issues that haven't been resolved yet, you can't meet the needs of your body and your bones. So and we don't want to just take calcium by itself, right? It's not all about calcium. There are so many other nutrients that are an important part of this picture. So yes, calcium is important. It is the primary mineral constituent of our bones. And if you are not getting enough calcium and then you're also eating some arugula, you're going to get a good amount of calcium just from those things. And you can probably fill in the gaps with some cruciferous vegetables, which have bioavailable calcium as well. But you may still fall short of the needs that you have. So that might be a situation where you consider supplementation. But if you're supplementing, you also need to be incorporating things like vitamin D. It's not just a nutrient, it's also a hormone in our bodies. And in terms of vitamin D, you never just want to supplement blindly with vitamin D. You always want to get your levels tested first. So you would go get a 25-hydroxy vitamin D blood test. Most physicians are going to be able to order this. Functional medicine practitioners, naturopathic doctors, they will order that test. It's going to tell you what your levels are. And a lot of times, if your levels come back within 30 to 100 NGML, that's a really wide range, right? But being on the lower end of that range is probably not going to be a good thing. And then being on the higher end of that range or above, especially if you're over 100 NGML of vitamin D, that can also contribute to bone loss. So it's really important. Now, if you're on the lower end and you're trying to boost your levels, your best source of vitamin D is going to be the sun. Right? Getting some sun on your bare skin, not laden with chemical sunscreens and things like that. You want to get some sun on your bare skin. And then if you're in the wintertime, right, or you're in an area where you're in colder months, and the sun's rays aren't strong enough to generate enough vitamin D production, that would be when you could consider supplementation. So that's vitamin D. Magnesium is also very important for your health and for your bones. Remember I said your bones are 50% protein by volume. In order to rebuild those amino acids into things in your body, you have to have magnesium to do that. And also, as your intake of calcium and vitamin D increases, so too does your need for magnesium. So it's another important one to incorporate. And then I mentioned vitamin C rich foods. Those are really important to incorporate, making sure you're getting adequate protein. And then vitamin K2 is also important. Vitamin K2 aids in bone mineralization, and it prevents calcium from getting lodged in your soft tissues, your arteries, your kidneys, and things like that. And there's this whole nutrient picture beyond just calcium.
One of the supplements that has been studied for longevity is berberine, which actually resembles the effect of metformin, which independently has been studied for longevity. And because it helps with multiple things like your cholesterol levels, it helps with unfriendly bacteria and fungus like yeast, but it also helps blood sugar and insulin management. And then there are rapamycin, which is an antibiotic that has been studied for longevity. A lot of the studies were done on animals, but now they are trying to do randomized controlled trials in humans and show the benefits of rapamycin in terms of autophagy. It acts on something called mTOR at the cellular level to improve longevity. I love the extract from the broccoli sprout, which contains sulforaphanes, and these are diindole methane, calcium D-glucarate, and indole I3C, which are all from the broccoli sprout extract, which are excellent for gut health, other than things like vitamin D, omega-3s, and curcumin, and of course probiotics. But eating prebiotic foods and resistant starches is also great for gut health. And L-glutamine just to repair the lining of the gut.
I love nutrients like cat's claw that have been around for a long time. And I've used them in thousands of people, and they work very well and it's safe. Why is cat's claw so good? It helps to get rid of unfriendly flora in the gut, and it helps to reduce inflammatory signaling in the gut. So you're knocking down inflammatory signaling, you're getting rid of unfriendly flora, and you're allowing that probiotic and prebiotic to take hold so you can start to change the milieu of that intestine again and get that healthy environment that allows for the absorption of nutrients. There's other ones that work well too. You can think of olive leaf extract or grapefruit seed extract, and a couple other ones that are great for reducing inflammation in the gut. So if you have irritable bowel or colitis, those types of things, curcumin, so standardized curcumin extracts, and boswellia, also very important. So there's a wide variety of nutrients that can help with actually healing your gut. For example, glutamine helps you to keep your epithelial cells nice and full. Zinc carnosine, actually used in Europe for GERD. So instead of reaching for a PPI, they recommend zinc carnosine. So there's several compounds that just can have a tremendous benefit for you depending on what your needs are.
There's a link between your gut health and your brain health. And one of those links we found is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate. There's multiple short-chain fatty acids, but butyrate's the one we have the most data on. If your gut is making butyrate, it protects your brain from inflammation. So we're finding with kids with autism have lower butyrate levels, and so they're more prone to actually brain inflammation and their white matter, which sets them up for autism. Well, realizing that similar phenomena can happen in older people for Alzheimer's disease. So, the young kid phenomena of autism has a very similar chemical setup for the neurological issues in adulthood. Well, butyrate is this amazing thing that your body naturally makes to protect your brain. Now, one of the things your gut also makes is toxins, right? We go to the bathroom, stuff comes out, right? Well, and there's these things called endotoxins, which are bacteria made by there are toxins made by the bacteria in your gut. Well, your gut also makes the antidote for those toxins called butyrate. So all of a sudden, your body's making toxins as you eat things, as you digest, as you detoxify, and if they leak back in your system with a thing called leaky gut, which it seems like everybody has these days, and you're not making enough butyrate, it sets you up for chronic illnesses. So now we're realizing that supplementing with butyrate, you can use butyrate supplementation. You can actually naturally abate the effects of these toxins in your body if you don't make enough butyrate. And there's a supplement, there's an herbal source naturally occurring that actually acts like butyrate if you can't find it and do it, and that's turmeric. That's curcumin, right? It's interesting. There's interesting data from India. You can be diabetic in India like they're here, but they have a 4-fold lower risk of Alzheimer's disease, thought to be because of this effect of large amounts of consumption of turmeric. And the chemicals in turmeric, the curcuminoids, actually have this brain protective effect. And they have a gut protective effect. So you can eat butyrate-rich foods like ghee. It's really kind of interesting. In ancient Ayurvedic medicine, 2000 BC, 4,000 years ago, they noticed that ghee consumption helped lower neurological issues for what we now know as Parkinson's. And I remember hearing that first, and I'm like, that's a bunch of hooey, ancient mysticism, blah, blah, blah. Well, now we have a biological model for how someone 4,000 years ago figured out butyrate's good for your brain. And now we can actually use butyrate supplementation to augment what your gut doesn't make, which is another reason why fermented foods are super important. You can add in turmeric and curcuminoids. You want a high quality turmeric, 95% bioavailable curcumin. But now we can actually use turmeric to replicate what your body naturally would do in its self-healing process.
The vast majority of patients dealing with a diagnosis of cancer are missing some fundamental nutrients. They're very low in vitamin D3. Now, D3 can be low because you've got genetic hiccups that make it difficult to process the vitamin D. D3 could be low because people are now terrified of the sunshine. D3 could be low because they're obese. D3 could be low because they're on medications. Certain blood pressure medications, statin drugs, all deplete your vitamin D levels. We have so many people on those drugs today. So that's really important because vitamin D is like pulling and pushing on hundreds of levers in the genetic expression. It's also stabilizing blood sugar. It's also harmonizing hormones. It's also an antidepressant. It's massively important, and these patients are much more vulnerable with low vitamin D levels. The other one that's often very deficient is B12. And this is, ironic because everyone's out there promoting kind of vegan or vegetarian diets for cancer, and yet it's the most common nutrient deficiency in those populations as well as in cancer patients. And it's so critical for our methylation and how we process our chemicals and exposures and how we process our hormones and other things. So B12 deficiency, it's not just affecting your neurological system, but definitely your methylation system. And then we look at things like selenium. Selenium is quite deficient. It's considered the master methylator and the genome protector. It's also what upregulates TP53 tumor suppressor gene. And so more than 50% of the population has a broken TP53 tumor suppressor gene. And once you've also had cancer treatment, you really break that, ability for that gene to do its job. And so selenium in the form of sodium selenite, don't go after the Brazil nuts, don't go after the selenomethionine, go after the sodium selenite form, can be very helpful. That needs to be guided with a physician because it can have toxicity. And so those supplements are often critical for patients. Vitamin C is another one that tends to be very depleted in patients dealing with cancer. It also is used up very easily, as is magnesium, in high stress situations. So if people are in chronic stress, they're typically low in vitamin C and magnesium. So those would be two that I would look at supplementing. Today, it's like if you don't eat your turmeric, I almost feel sorry for you. Like there's so many things that turmeric and its extract of curcumin are incredibly powerful. They just sort of, again, pull so many levers like vitamin D. I think that's a really reasonable one to look at taking on occasion. Another one that I think has really high merit is for people who are metabolically broken or inflexible is berberine. And berberine can really clean up the gut from any gut infections and dysbiotic processes, but it's very powerful to help with insulin response and have some anti-cancer effects as well.
When we look at what other ways we can optimize longevity with supplementation, we look at examples like metformin. Metformin is actually typically a diabetes medication for type 2 diabetes, but there's actually a lot of literature that shows it may actually extend lifespan. Now, it is a prescription medication, so it's not technically a supplement, but it is something that it has been shown to potentially extend lifespan. There's a TAME trial underway right now, which is going to finally give us hopefully the real answer on this. It's a prospective trial looking at metformin on longevity, but a lot of studies have already shown that there's a potential massive benefit there. There are a lot of researchers in the longevity space who take metformin themselves for that reason. Now, there is some potential adverse reaction to it as it relates to muscular hypertrophy, which means building muscle, and so there are some proponents of taking metformin only on the days you're not doing strength training, for example, to not affect that. So there's definitely some nuance there, but there is some science around metformin potentially affecting longevity. NAD boosters can potentially affect longevity as well. And so whether it's NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, or nicotinamide riboside NR, those are potential ways of NAD. Again, studies are still underway. Efficacy, dosing, how much, when do you take it is still something that is being studied, but there's definitely something around that as well. Then you can look at things like senolytics. Senolytics are ways that we can clear senescent cells. So what are senescent cells? I like to compare them to your in-laws. I jokingly like to compare them to your in-laws because they're cells that are supposed to be gone, but they just won't leave. They're dead, but they won't leave. And what they're doing is they're secreting these nasty chemicals and cytokines, and they're destroying all the cells around them. They're toxic to the cells around them, and they just won't leave. And that's why I like to compare them to your in-laws. So senolytics are drugs, supplements that can help clear those senescent cells. So there are products out there that are identified as senolytic. We could look at certain drugs that may help that as well. You know, rapamycin, target mTOR is a gene pathway related to longevity. And so rapamycin is something that's been looked at in this capacity as well. Definitely something that is being studied, has great potential to help clear senescent cells. And so that's really the exciting part of longevity when we look at ways that we can impact the three pathways, the AMP kinase pathway, the SIRT2 pathway, and the mTOR pathway. And that's where the innovation is occurring, and that's where we're going to make real leaps and bounds in the next few years in the field of longevity. DHEA is a supplement that most people need. Most people are deficient in DHEA. What is DHEA? It's a steroid hormone. It's a precursor to testosterone. Women need testosterone as much as men do because testosterone gets converted into estradiol. And so DHEA is a precursor to that, and often we're deficient in DHEA. DHEA is important for mood, for energy, for metabolism, and also as a precursor to other hormones. And so DHEA is a hormone supplement that I recommend most people take. NAC is a supplement that helps boost glutathione production. What is glutathione? Glutathione is an antioxidant. It's our natural defense against oxidative stress, against toxins. It is our liver's way of protecting us. It needs NAC, N-acetylcysteine, to make glutathione. To clear these toxins as a free radical scavenger, we need NAC. So supplementing with NAC is a recommended supplement for everyone. What we know for testosterone production, the B vitamins are critically important. So B6, B12, we know that zinc and magnesium, these nutrients are critically important for testosterone production. We know that you need enough cholesterol in your body to make testosterone because it's actually the precursor of the steroid synthesis pathway. And so a lot of men who are eating a very low-fat diet can actually be at risk for low testosterone production. The problem here is there are a lot of testosterone boosters out there on the market, a lot of supplements that claim that they boost testosterone. Most of them simply don't work beyond, again, B6, B12, zinc, magnesium, addressing proper nutrition. Those are the key ingredients that you need.
CoQ10 being so important for your heart. But it turns out that along that pathway, there's something called geranol. And we never knew you could get it as a supplement. And now you can. And geranol is cool because it actually helps your body make estrogen and testosterone. So it's a super cool longevity supplement. Also helps with bone density. And bone density is such a key thing that we've got to look at. So I love GG. I love another one, annattotrionols. I'm not a big fan of taking straight vitamin E, like the tocopherols. We get enough through our diet, but tocotrienols, especially this annatto E tocotrienols, are amazing. Good for women going through menopause, helps with hot flashes, but again, bone density. And I think we do not focus enough on bone density. Like we should be getting a bone density test at 20, because when we can actually make a difference with it, at 30, these are things we should be monitoring.
I choose certain herbs and supplements based on a person's condition. One of the most common things that I see is people's cortisol, the stress hormone, goes up. Some call it the major ager. When cortisol stays high, it breaks down muscles, it breaks down bones, it depresses your immune system, it increases blood sugar, blood cholesterol, and it ages you faster. It makes your skin break down, collagen breaks down. So what I do for people is one of my favorite supplements to lower cortisol is phosphatidylserine. I know it's a long name. People call it PS for short. Phosphatidylserine is a part of our body. It coats the nerve cells. It's in our brains. It's in our entire nervous system. So when you take phosphatidylserine, and cortisol can destroy the memory cells in your brain. It prevents them from regenerating. Phosphatidylserine is like a protective coating over the nerves, and it helps you regenerate those memory cells. It lowers the cortisol, which is going to break you down and age you faster. And I also use it a lot to help people sleep. It's not a sleeping pill, it's not a narcotic, but it calms the nervous system and it lowers the cortisol, because some people get all riled up before bed. They need to calm down. When the cortisol rises at bedtime, they're not going to be able to sleep. They're wound up. The phosphatidylserine will lower that cortisol and allow them to fall asleep. It's not habit forming, and it doesn't interfere with any other medication or supplement.
Turns out that there's so many supplements which work and benefit our health in so many ways. I want you to consider these recommendations and cater it to your specific needs. If you found today's information valuable, you're going to love the next episode. But first, make sure to join Zonia if you haven't done it yet. We already have an unprecedented number of people joining and loving the content because Zonia is the perfect complementary resource to the Ageless docuseries. If our episodes showed you the why, Zonia will show you the how. All the action steps are presented in a simple 5 to 7 minute video format so you can follow anytime at your own pace. Simply deciding on your goal and getting started has never been easier. Imagine having access to the most trusted and effective health and wellness solutions you need all in one place. No more searching for hours online or spending a fortune on expensive products and programs that have not been proven to work. With Zonia, you can get started right away by simply watching the 5 to 7 minute long health bites. Our experts will guide you through restorative strategies and routines that help you get back on track with your nutrition, sleep, mood, hormonal balance, memory, and so much more. These techniques are all backed up by science and time-tested ancient healing methods, so I'm confident you'll transform your life one video at a time. In addition, inside Zonia, you'll also get full on-demand access to all of our other signature docuseries, like the groundbreaking 10-part Immune for Life docuseries and the powerful 7-part Toxin-Free docuseries, so you can learn more about the link between your hormones and aging, toxicity and immunity, all in one place, easy to access and navigate. However, like anything else in life, you need to take action and actually take the first step. To thousands of people, Zonia has been the help they needed to really make the transformation. The question is, are you one of those people who really want to see their life change for the better? If so, checking out Zonia to see how it can help you achieve that goal is the next logical step. So don't delay and join our Zonia family today in order to get on-demand access to all 10 episodes of Ageless. If you wait and decide to join after the end of this free screening, you'll still have access to over 1,000 health bites and other content, but the Ageless docuseries will be gone. Don't wait and miss this opportunity to become the person who looks in the mirror with no regrets about what could have been if only you had started sooner. Your transformation starts today, and it is incredibly affordable. We could have charged hundreds of dollars for access to Zonia, but we wanted to make these rejuvenation videos accessible to everyone. This is why access to Zonia starts from as low as $10 a month, which is less than 50 cents a day. And it is 100% risk-free for 7 days since you're protected by our money-back guarantee. Start exploring how fun and easy getting healthy and feeling your best can actually be. You'll have to join today because there are less than 72 hours left. So check out Zonia today. It's where you can also watch and rewatch today's episode anytime you want. And please drop us a note in the comment section below. We would love to hear from you. In the next and final episode, we're going to cover all the emerging therapies and solutions that rapidly change the course of aging. These therapies have been proven precise and effective, but unlike herbs or supplements, you've probably never heard of them. Thank you so much for joining me today, and make sure you don't miss the next episode. Cheers, my friend.